Well, good afternoon. I wish that we had a better report from the Frontline Pay Working Group to represent compromise for Minnesota's workers who everyone says has been heroes in the pandemic but have not been treated like heroes in all cases. This legislative session produced a budget agreement that included $250 million for frontline workers. The mission of the working group has been to make a recommendation to the legislature on how to distribute $250 million. Part of the reason a working group was established is because legislative leaders knew that figuring out a pathway forward for distribution would be a challenge, and in the waning days of the special session as we approached a government shutdown, Speaker Hortman, who was pushing for the $250 million and negotiated with former Senate Majority Leader Gazelka and Finance Chair Rosen, felt that we needed to have a mechanism in place to distribute the money. After 12 or 13 hearings in which we heard from dozens and dozens of frontline workers from all over Minnesota, from all backgrounds and walks of life, from all different kinds of industries about the sacrifice that they made, the risks that they took, the ways in which their own health, the health and lives and safety of their family members, colleagues, and friends were put at risk to serve all Minnesotans. After numerous efforts to find a compromise, the Frontline Pay Working Group concludes by sending out essentially the opening position of the 3 Republican members and a compromise version of what the Democrats originally proposed. Today, we tried to move forward in a last, frankly, desperate effort to see if we could kickstart a compromise negotiation within the working group. And we're disappointed when that failed. The compromise that we brought forward today was based on a conversation that Senator Housley and I had weeks ago. And we had consistently had a hard time hearing back from the GOP members in the Senate Republican majority. We did the work to whittle down the numbers to figure out exactly how many workers would be affected. We looked for ways to narrow the number of workers so that we could maximize the benefit. We knew it was important to Republicans to maximize that as much as possible for healthcare workers. We brought forward a compromise today that would have allowed them to receive approximately double what all the other workers would receive. And despite all of those efforts, and in fact, repeated efforts, they were all rejected, and we are left with the Frontline Working Group failing in its mission. So I'm disappointed today, and as I said in the hearing room, if legislators performed like frontline workers, we would be done with this today. And if frontline workers performed like legislators, Minnesotans would be in terrible shape today in this pandemic. So we're going to hear from a few workers. We're going to hear from the other members on the working group on the DFL side. And this means that we have yet another issue to take to the regular session. And the last thing I want to say is we were making good progress until we had new leadership elected in the Minnesota Senate. And we started to hear that the health commissioner, Jan Malcolm, needed to be fired because she believed in vaccines. And turmoil and chaos and anti-vaccine politics on the extreme right of the Republican Party is doing nobody any good in this pandemic, and it's time to move forward with that. But it does not give me a lot of optimism for this next session. Dwight?
Yeah, thanks. So hi, my name is Dwight Gaddis. I'm a retail grocery worker and a UFCW Local 663 member at Kowalski's Market. I'm a critical component of the food supply chain that makes Minnesota work. Retail grocery workers over the past has helped keep thousands of Minnesota families fed. We provide a safe, friendly marketplace for folks to access goods. I'm very proud of the work that I do and very proud of the work that my fellow retail grocery workers do as well. I consider myself a frontline essential worker that has been excluded from the Republican proposal for frontline essential worker pay. As a retail grocery worker who has continued to work through the pandemic, it is very frustrating to me that the Republicans on the Frontline Worker Pay Working Group continue to move forward proposals that tell me retail grocery workers are not worthy of the $250 million in hero pay. It is now clear to me that they never had any intentions of including all essential frontline workers. Instead, they wasted our time choosing to play politics instead of taking care of us, the workers who continue to put themselves on the line their lives on the line on a daily basis. I believe the right thing to do is to honor all essential frontline workers by passing legislation that disperses the $250 million in a swift manner into the hands that it needs to go into. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello. My name is Chrissy Devorak, Krissy, Dvorak. I am the owner and director of Our Kenswakan Childcare in Eagan and a leader with Kids Count on Us, a statewide coalition of over 500 community-based childcare centers. I've been working on the front lines of the pandemic together with other early childhood educators. We've served as the foundation of the essential workforce, keeping our state running and safe. We've been caring for the children of other essential workers so that the healthcare workers could make their shifts, grocery store workers could stock the shelves, couriers could deliver much-needed supplies, and so that grade school educators could teach our children what we taught theirs. My child care center is a walk-in child care center, meaning we accept children if there's overflow from another program, or such as when other centers and in-home providers close their doors, many for good. On a regular basis, my team was the last line of defense to ensure others were able to make it to work. It is insulting and shameful that the Republican legislators sitting on the Frontline Worker Pay Working Group have proposed to exclude a vast number of frontline workers like me, who have been putting their health and livelihoods on the line for our state. All frontline workers should be included in the $250 million of the frontline worker pay. We all reported to work in the face of personal risk and uncertainty for the greater good. As a child care provider, I put my health of myself and my family on the line. I have personally borne the brunt of the chronic underfunding of child care in our state. I couldn't take pay for many months in order to keep my center open and our remaining staff on payroll instead. Early on, I even had to pay them for my husband's paycheck at times. As a result, my husband and I fell behind on our bills as the months passed. The impact of frontline worker pay matters. For us, that's helped toward our mortgage, groceries, and outstanding bills. I'm urging our lawmakers, members of the Frontline Worker Pay Group, to include all frontline workers in the frontline worker pay. Then, we need to address the systemic issues this pandemic has brought to light for all essential jobs across the state. Thank you.
Good afternoon. While the Frontline Worker Working Group has come to an unfortunate end, the impact of the testimony provided by the workers that came before the work group has been completed. 13 public meetings will stay with me. It will help guide me in my work at the Department of Labor and Industry in achieving its mission of ensuring Minnesota work and living environments are equitable, healthy, and safe. As a member of this group, I have seen and heard the stories from frontline workers about their reality during this pandemic. They are still facing many of these challenges today. These workers deserve to be respected, protected, and paid for their sacrifices. The 3 commissioners on the Frontline Worker Pay Working Group have been deeply impacted by this process and have been ready and willing to make a fair compromise. We had a proposal before Labor Day deadline, and we tried until the very end to reach a compromise. The process of distributing this pay to frontline workers should remain our focus. It should focus on the hundreds of thousands of workers who have stepped up on our behalf during this unprecedented time. Whether it's healthcare or meatpacking, childcare, education, or grocery stores, we remain committed to recognizing every one of the hundreds of thousands of frontline workers who have and continue to make a sacrifice. As this phase of the work group wraps up, the commissioners, on behalf of the administration, will continue our work to get prepared to distribute the $250 million to frontline workers. We will also join with workers to identify a more comprehensive list to requests to address the many concerns we've heard throughout this process. This has been a difficult challenge. It's been tough on many of us. But at the end of the day, I do believe we need to focus on the workers. They are indeed the true heroes, and they should receive the money that's been set aside for them. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? Cedric Frazier, Representative District 45A, which is New Hope, Crystal, and Plymouth. I won't be long, and I'll get to the point. You know, we had one job to do, and it was to get this $250 million out to essential workers, frontline workers. And I am disappointed, is probably the best word I can use right now. I got some other stronger words I'd like to use, but very disappointed that we didn't get that done. We have, we had 2 proposals that are going forward. We brought a compromise proposal, hoping that we could engage in public discourse and negotiation so that workers and everyone, all Minnesotans, could see us working together to get something done. That offer was rejected, plain and simple. It was rejected. There's no other way to put that. What we have going now is we have our positions, our strong positions. One position that excludes tens of thousands of workers, some of our lowest wage workers, some of the workers that had the highest spread of COVID among workers. Many of them died. We have a proposal that will exclude many of those workers, a proposal that says those workers are not worthy of this $250 million or to have access to this $250 million. That is very disappointing. That is insulting to those workers, to the family members of those workers that know their family members went to work day in and day out and lost their lives to serve Minnesotans, to take care of us, to keep us moving forward when many of us were able to stay home. There's no other way to put that. It's very disappointing, very. We often talked about doing something that was meaningful for our workers. Excluding thousands of workers from the category of getting access to this money and saying they're not worthy is just downright mean. There's nothing meaningful about it, it's just mean. That is what was said today when we voted 2 proposals out. One of those proposals still excluding thousands of workers. I want to thank Chrissy and Dwight for standing up here with us. The workers have stood with us throughout this process. We've had 13 meetings, and we could not come through for workers. I should say, some of us were unwilling to come through for workers. Some of us believe that thousands of workers, some who lost their lives, were not worthy of being recognized financially. It's unacceptable. I need all these workers to understand and to remember this. When you have time to provide your voice in your community, through the electoral process, remember those who said you were not worthy of this recognition. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to our Republican colleagues who are with us today. It's been an interesting journey, and I just want to make sure and acknowledge you. I'm Erin Murphy. I'm a member of the Frontline Worker Pay Group from the Minnesota Senate. I want to thank Senator Melissa Lopez Franson for the opportunity to serve and for her willingness to allow me to lead and to represent the members of our caucus in our fight for frontline workers. I also want to thank the frontline workers who have stood with us virtually and in person and have continued to do the work for the people of Minnesota through the last now, I suppose, 19 months of a pandemic. And I want to be really clear with you that what we're experiencing right now is a failure to serve you, and it's a failure of the legislature, but it is not the failure that people expect. And I think it has become commonplace to say the legislature or the Congress can't get anything done, government can't get anything done. And I think through the now 12 meetings of this Frontline Worker Group, all the work that we did in the session, Cedric Frazier and I carrying this legislation, is proof that people will call frontline workers heroes, we'll pay them lip service, but when it comes to doing the work of recognizing their labor with frontline worker pay, we've experienced nothing but obstruction in the last month, and an obstruction that is very difficult to understand and comprehend. When I think about the frontline workers and what we've been through in the course of the pandemic, it is hard to express the strangeness of being in a crisis for 19 months. But we have been in a crisis for 19 months. The virus is not done with us yet. And I especially think now of parents who are sending their kids to school, and their kids are getting infected in our schools, and everybody's trying to operate their lives as if we're reaching back to normal when we are not yet really experiencing any sense of normal. When I think about the frontline workers and the ways in which the legislature has responded to crisis, I think about sandbaggers who volunteer and fill sandbags in floods like we've experienced year after year in the Red River Valley. I think about the Good Samaritans who show up and care for people who have been in a car accident, whether it is making sure that they're safe in place, removing them from a vehicle, or doing CPR. I think about them, heroes. I think about the people who show up after a tornado. And we've had plenty of tornadoes in Minnesota, the people who show up with their chainsaws to remove the debris from the streets so we can begin to come back to normal. I think about those people, those Minnesotans who stand up in a crisis and say, I'll do it. I will do my part because I care about my community, I care about the people around me, and I know what to do. I'll do it. The frontline workers are the very same people, except for that they were called into work. They were called into a risky situation when most of us were sent home because of an emergency. They went to work. They took the risk. They said, I'll do it. I know how to do it. I will do my job, and they did. And we've called them heroes, and yet we're not willing to recognize them with the frontline worker pay. As Tom Hauser said, is it impossible to give away $250 million? It shouldn't be. But here we are, after 12 meetings, with money that is available, and we still can't reach a conclusion. It is not a failure of bipartisanship. It is not a failure of gridlock. It is the choice on the part of a party to say no, to obstruct, to create chaos, because the tools of obstruction and failure serve this Republican Party. I think about my early tenure in the Minnesota legislature after the 35W bridge collapse. And despite political objections and with political risk, Republicans and Democrats came together and overrode a governor's veto to make sure there was adequate funding to rebuild our transportation system so that wouldn't happen again. That Republican Party doesn't exist right now. And it has been replaced by a party that chooses to obstruct rather than lead, that chooses to obstruct rather than make progress for the people of Minnesota. The failure of this frontline worker pay is not just a failure for the frontline workers. And let's be clear, what we saw happen in the last month when the frontline worker pay group and the Republicans that sit on this group made the decision to obstruct rather than make progress. It was a month ago. I don't know what happened a month ago, but a month ago, the negotiations stopped. There was no more real effort. There's been no negotiation at the table. And in addition to that, there have been external roadblocks that have been laid down, whether it is the threat to fire a commissioner, the need to reform emergency powers, or efforts to remove non-existent mandates around vaccines and masks. All of those things have been laid at the feet of the work of this frontline worker pay group. They've all served to obstruct our progress, not just for the frontline workers, but also for farmers who have suffered because of a drought, who are waiting for action, and for the long-term care industry who have made it clear that they would like relief in this special session, but they won't get it. They won't get it because there has been a real effort, and I don't know why, but a real effort to obstruct a meaningful conclusion to this work that would take us to a special session and a meaningful agreement that external issues not related to this would be taken off the table. That is a bad sign for our government. And I want people to understand that this is not your average conclusion and that we are capable of better. But we need a Republican Party to come back to the table, away from obstruction, away from this behavior to create chaos and failure, and back to the work of satisfying the needs for the people of Minnesota. I'm deeply disappointed that we did not achieve that. But I think it is clear that this is not your average compromise or lack thereof. And instead, it is a signal that a part of this legislature is unwilling to do the actual work for the people of Minnesota. And I hope that changes.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. I'm State Senator Melissa Lopez-Franzen. I'm a minority leader for the Senate Democrats, and I stand here in complete solidarity with workers, all of them. And what Senator Murphy mentioned is the pattern and practice that I've seen in the Minnesota Senate. And as you see, we have House representation and Senate representation that are in lockstep in solidarity with workers. No question. What we've seen in the last 13 meetings have been words and empty promises, and it's not new. It's been happening for years. And in this case, when I say promises, words and empty promises, we bargained for this frontline worker group to take place. And the other side pushed for something else. So when people say that we don't have enough money, when legislators say there's not enough money in the pot to cover everybody, that is a false choice. We spent lots of money for reinsurance that was traded for worker pay in this instance. And maybe I'm getting in the weeds of negotiations, but that is how this legislature and the Minnesota Senate has operated. Trading what we should do right for workers, instead of protecting them, we might protect more the employers and the profits of the employers. And I'm not surprised by this outcome. Yes, I join the disappointment, but I'm not surprised. And this is setting a really bad tone, not just for the Senate, but for our legislature and for our democracy. And it's not just obstruction, it's division. It's division by pitting us against each other, Dwight versus Kissy. And that is not something that I nor my caucus is willing to accept. So we're not going to continue to hold issues or commissioners hostage. We're going to protect them. We're going to stand by them. And that is not negotiable. I would want to just conclude with a short story about a frontline worker in my district that I recently had ability to meet. And this person, her name is Amal. She's in her 50s. She's worked in the same senior home care for over 20 years. She commutes every day from Lakeville to Edina, wakes up at 4:30 in the morning for a shift of 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. When COVID hit, her shift changed from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and nights and weekends. She suffers from carpal tunnel and arthritis, has surgery on one knee from a torn meniscus. Her pain is overwhelming when she's on her feet for long periods of time. If she worked in the hospital setting, that same person, Amal, would not be covered under this Republican proposal. Is that fair? I'll let you decide. The Democrats don't believe that's fair. Just today, we heard a report from the U.S. House saying that at least 59,000 meat packer workers became ill with COVID. 269 of them died. Just an infection rate of one facility was as high as 54%. These are people. They have names, they have families, they have pre-existing conditions, and they need our support. So again, members of the Republican Party and my colleagues, money is not the issue. It's the will to get something done, to stop dividing us as a state, as parties, and come together for workers who showed up to work regardless of their party affiliation, regardless of their religion, regardless of any other dividing factor. They did that for all of us. And the least we can do is come together after 13 meetings and do our work. Thank you.
Questions?
What does this decision today realistically mean for the timeline? It seems like you're saying special session probably won't happen, this will go to the regular session. I mean, is this something that could come up quickly? Is it going to be part of all the issues at play? Could it be a while yet before even this is voted on?
Yeah, well, we had basically two conclusions from the hearing today. The first is that Democrats are ready to go down a compromise path with two groups splitting the fund in a different way to recognize the level of sacrifice from a set of workers and to try to reach the Republicans somewhere in the middle. We're ready to do that, and if you look at the next legislative session and the timeline for it, there is a path for compromise. We've tried to show where it could be. The second thing that happened in the hearing today is that the Republican members insisted 2 weeks in a row that we simply vote out different packages and not come to a conclusion. And last week, we were surprised when they brought a motion to terminate the work of the working group by sending out those proposals, including by drafting language for us for our proposal. And despite the fact that I thought it was probably done, we decided it was worth putting forward one more proposal today. So that also failed, and the working group concluded, I think, that the next set of negotiations for this fund, which frankly now is not bound by $250 million, the next legislative session could include a substantially larger amount and actually serve the needs of the workers, maybe address the actual long-term cost of adequately paying long-term care workers, which we need to do. There's a much bigger agenda that needs to happen this legislative session than this $250 million fund. And so I think we're shifting back to regular legislative mode. And in my mind, by refusing to compromise, Republicans in the Senate welched on their agreement in the last budget session, and I think coming to an agreement will be that much harder this year.
One of the statements made by the Republicans on the panel previously was that the amount that you want to give in your proposal just isn't enough to be meaningful to people. That was one of the statements, and that $250 million will only go so far. How do you respond to that?
The workers, the ones who have done the work, have said that's a meaningful amount. What was in our original proposal, the workers said that's a meaningful amount for us. And they have held together in solidarity, supporting one another. And I think their judgment is much more relevant to the question than the judgment of some of us who are elected to do right by them.
If this is an unsuccessful outcome, why did the four of you support it?
Support the conclusion of the work because we ran out of time. Despite making every effort to find some compromise publicly, privately, through multiple weeks, going way over deadline, and knowing that as we look at the timeline for implementation, we are spilling well into the next legislative session and seeing no progress whatsoever, We decided that this Frontline Pay Working Group has reached its conclusion. Senator Housley is here in the room today. If you were to tell me that negotiating some kind of two-group solution was something that you had the power to do, I would happily walk out of this room and do it right now with you. But the story we've heard consistently is that that compromise is not on the table. And so it was time to send the two proposals out as they wanted.
So this will be presented to legislative leaders and to the governor. What is the chance then that among them, they would find some compromise that then there could be a special session and this could get through before the next regular session?
What are the chances that the governor, Senator Miller, and Speaker Hortman will reach an agreement before the regular session? I don't think that they are terribly high, but I'm sure they will try.
You seem to open the door to the number getting larger. I mean, is that a likely discussion next session right away? That, you know, we have these two options, but maybe we should just increase the number and we can include some of the people that we haven't been able to agree to.
It was hard to get to $250 million during the regular session last year. Speaker Hortman pushed and pushed and pushed to get to that dollar amount. That was with Senator Gazelka, and I think Senator Gazelka would have made sure, if he were still the majority leader and not running for governor, I think he would have made sure that this work got done. The question is really back to Senator Miller as the new majority leader, whether he can make deals at all with Democrats and get his caucus to move together towards a compromise. So far, we are not seeing their ability to do that. And as we have said in more than one occasion, we are here and authorized to make a deal. I am not sure that the Republican members of the working group have the authority to make an agreement with us, and I think that's why we are where we are.
And I'll just add that, and Representative Winkler alluded to this, I think we have important questions before us as we head into the next session. And we have all along talked about using some of the $1.2 billion of ARPA funds on the bottom line to make sure that we're doing right by our frontline workers. But just like in other parts of the country now, we know we're experiencing a worker shortage, which really isn't a worker shortage, but a wage shortage. And I think for many of the people that we have been talking with in terms of frontline workers, whether it is people in long-term care or home care, people work in hospitals, child care, and education, we have some responsibility to respond to the fact that there are entire sectors in the workplace that are acting right now without adequate workers, and we need to address that as well. So I think we will come back to this question of frontline workers, but we also have to think about the workforce, the working conditions, and what makes it realistic for people to go to work now that we are experiencing such a workforce shortage, which really isn't a workforce shortage, but a wage shortage. Thank you.
Time for one last question.
I have a question from Brian Bax. He's asking, is there anything stopping the governor from using his allocation to pay out $250 million as you've suggested, that coming from his pool of COVID money, or increasing the amount of spending there?
I think the governor has authority to spend. The question is whether he has authority to create a program for distribution. So if he had if there's an existing state program for distribution of funds, I think he could allocate money for it. But I don't know if that exists or how much flexibility he would have in distributing the money that way.
Thank you.
I just found it in my pocket.
Wow, prize.
Thank you. I'm Senator Karen Housley. I was one of 3 Republicans on the Frontline Worker Work Group. We did get our work done today. Per the legislation that we were tasked with, it said we can provide up to 3 proposals and get that out to the legislature. So we had 2 proposals last week that were voted down, and they're the exact same proposals that were voted out today. I do want to thank Dwight and Chrissy for coming to work every day. We heard from so many frontline workers during our 13 meetings, so many essential workers, but this money was supposed to be a thank you to those who had direct contact with COVID. And the Frontline Working Group actually got our work done. We actually had 3 proposals on the table today, including the compromise proposal that we had the Republican, the Democrat ones, and then there was one in the middle. And the Republican members of the group did vote to get that out to the legislature. Remember, that's the end goal. The end goal was to get a proposal or 2 or 3 to the legislature. We voted for that, which would include Dwight and Chrissy and all of the other members that they said to you today. The Democrats voted that down. They voted down their own compromise proposal. So in committee, we thought, you know what? It's time to end this political theater. Even this press conference that was set up today was set up before we even had our committee hearing. Committee hearing was at 1 o'clock. They set the press conference for 1:30. They had scripted things to say, knowing right where they wanted the committee hearing to come out. And after a while, you just get tired of pushing this further and further down the road to hear, let's come back again next week when we have legislative language. We don't have another week. We've been doing this for 13 weeks. We keep coming to the same conclusion. So it was time to end this political theater. Every week that goes by is another week that these checks aren't into these frontline worker hands. We have the 2 proposals now. Let's get those to Governor Walz, have him call a special session, and get these dollars into the hands of these frontline workers. And with that, I will have Senator Kiffmeyer add what she wants to add about our working group.
Well, it was a really good experience hearing from so many people. I think we've all recognized that that was very impactful. But in the end, you look at the statute, and as Senator Housley said, we did the work of the work group. We have those proposals going to the legislature. There we have committee hearings. There we have the power of the legislature. This is a work group. We make proposals, and we were successful in getting that done. And Senator Housley did a great job co-chairing and leading us through all of that. But I think she rightly recognized that it is time to use the power of the entire 201 legislators, and to use all of them and all of their value that they bring to the table to bear in this issue. So I think it was time to do that. And I think that with that, we are ready to go to work. We're all going to be there. Representative Winkler and Representative Fraser and ourselves and Representative New Brindley, we will all be there still in the legislature, bringing this forward to a successful conclusion, benefiting a value. But again, the language was specifically for frontline, those who were directly in contact with COVID patients, who put themselves at extreme risk, not likely risk, they knew the risk. The stories of the ICU nurses, of the long-term care, those people who were in the nursing homes and having to face COVID every single day without a vaccine, many times even questionable personal protection equipment. Those were the folks that this was designed for in a particular way. And we so appreciate all Minnesotans. We've gone through a tough year and a half. It's been a really tough year. From the little kids, from the babies, to the moms and dads, to the seniors, it's been a very tough year. But the money was particularly in accordance with the ARPA, with the federal rules, sustained COVID risk. And we tried to keep our focus on that statutory requirement, both federal and state. And so I want to thank you, Senator Housley, for bringing us to this point. And we're looking forward to now the governor calling a special session. It's not too late right now. The governor can have this happen in just a couple days. With the full power of the legislature, this can move very quickly. Thank you.
I know you can't speak for Senator Miller, or Majority Leader Miller, but is there any way you can guarantee that the health commissioner won't be axed in a special session?
Well, first of all, I think it's kind of Senator Miller is a new majority leader, so they're kind of taking a pretty negative statement in regards to that. That's not a good way to work bipartisanly into the future by making a statement like that. But I know Senator Miller, he will rise to the occasion, do what's best by the workers, and I think we'll be able to successfully move it forward in one fashion or another.
So about Commissioner Malcolm?
So we are not going to give up our constitutional authority to confirm commissioners. The Frontline Worker Group was tasked with $250 million and getting a proposal out the door. We got 2 of them out the door. So it is time for the governor to call a special session and get this money into the hands of those frontline workers who have been facing COVID risk for over a year and a half.
Are you worried today that sending 2 proposals will delay it further because now the legislature has to sort of figure out between these 2 and have discussions over this, and the discussions will continue? I mean, are you worried that, you know, this will also inevitably delay aid going out to workers?
Like Senator Kiffmeyer said, it can happen really fast. This was just a work group, and work group doesn't do deal making. When you have a work group with 6 Democrats and 3 Republicans, 3 that are appointed by the governor, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, we all put our best proposals forward, and that's what we were tasked to do. So let's get it to the legislature, have them call a special session, and I bet you we can get it done pretty fast.
Is it realistic to think that the governor would call you back for a special session without a preset agreement on whatever issues you would be able to take up?
I would hope not.
No. This is what the legislature does. Governor calls a special session, then the legislature works out the language, and then they come to an agreement. It's pretty straightforward.
What do you react to the idea that the number could grow if it gets into a legislative session? I know there's been some concerns that $250 million is not enough. There's more money from the rescue plan, you know, sort of sitting on the bottom line. Could that number grow if we get into the confines of a regular session?
We're staying pretty focused.
Yeah, we're staying pretty focused on our $250 million. If there's more money coming in when session starts in February, that can be a whole nother working group or have it go to the legislature. This $250 million working group came to its conclusion today and got 2 proposals out the door, so that's what we were
It'd
focused
be
on.
nice to do it by Thanksgiving and give a good thank you.
Get their holiday money to them.
So that would probably also preclude expanding beyond your definition of frontline workers to their definition of frontline workers, right?
This working group, we submitted our proposal for who we thought it should go to. They submitted theirs, and if they have more money come February, we can.
Or next month or whatever.
Or next month, or whenever more money comes in, we can reconvene a working group.
Do you feel it was misrepresented to the public to make it appear originally like this was for a larger pool of workers? I mean, or did you think it was always known to be just frontline medical or people who dealt with people who they knew probably had COVID?
It was, from the get-go, a frontline working group. It wasn't essential worker. The governor has deemed 1.3 million workers in the state of Minnesota to be essential. Of those, 667,000 were not able to work from home. So there were 667,000 essential workers not able to work from home. Our proposal focused on those who had the highest risk of COVID exposure of those frontline workers, not essential.
And the hospital exclusion that Senator Lopez, for instance, talked about, is that because the hospital people have plans, or what was that about?
I don't see where that exclusion came from.
No, I didn't see where that exclusion came to that Senator Lopez Franson said.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.